You roll on over there?
Yes.
Well, when I was 12, I knew I wanted to be a doctor and a scientist. I was brought to Boston to essentially have my spine completely fused. And I remember looking up saying, I'm going to be a doctor and a scientist someday. And so I became pre-med at a very early age. But it's interesting, after you farm your intellect for so long, then your body, your spirit throws you an illness to force you to cultivate a part of your body, your brain that you're not using in your mind. And so after, working as pre-med, I started falling asleep a lot, up to 17 hours a day. And this is kind of a difficult problem. I'll give you an example. Everyone say, I fall asleep during movies, and I fall asleep during class. Well, have you ever fallen asleep running and gotten run over by a truck because you fell asleep? And I actually was. So there was all kinds of falling asleep stories, and this wasn't funny. And this was making it hard for me, to finish Brown and graduate from medical school. And so they gave me a medicine, and what modern medicine got me only so far. It was great. It brought me 2 years, and I was able to finish Brown from a 2.2 average to a 4.0. So it was like, I'm healed, praise the Lord. Well then, like modern medicine can only take you so far. And the medicine started knocking out my bone marrow, and there wasn't another medicine that would help. And so I was forced to look for other things that most people don't want. So I remember going to a medical intuitive, and I thought she was a nut, which is, of course, what I've been becoming. And she told me that my brain freezes up, and it was related to intuition. And I thought, well, how do I fix this freezing up thing, which is falling asleep? She said, I don't know. So you get a lot of that. So I went to a bookstore in Boston, and I walked in. It was Trident Bookstore. I don't know if it's still there. And I just was sitting, because I used to, well, actually not sitting, standing. I'd stand a lot because of thinking I wouldn't fall asleep. And I look up at the shelf, and there's this book called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. So I figured the medical intuitive's not going to help me. I figure out maybe this woman named Louise Hay. And her hair was yellow, so. And so I took the book home, and you have to understand I was really athletic. I used to stay awake. I'd run 5 miles. I'd do reps. And, there were these things called affirmations that if you did them, you're supposed to get, you can heal your life, was the whole point. So I figured, I'll give it a try. I didn't have much else going for me at the time. Plus, student loans were coming due, and I had no other options. I actually could not afford not to go to medical school. So I did reps, just like you do in a gym. Instead of lifting barbells or whatever I love myself just the way I am, 10 times. And after 3 months, I stopped falling asleep, and I was able to go to medical school, which was absolutely lovely. And so I was going to throw away this intuition, throw away this affirmation stuff, because it was something that I needed to get to be kind of normal. But it didn't work. I got to my sophomore year, and I started really hitting the wall. I was doing an MD and a PhD, as anyone would overcompensate who has intuition. So I started blowing discs and stuff, and I couldn't end up going in the intellectual career that I wanted to, being a neurosurgeon, because you can't stand up. So I chose psychiatry because I could sit down, and I hated it. It was boring. But I learned, it's very interesting. All roads lead back to spirituality and intuition, no matter how brainy you want to become. Because the only part of psychiatry that I really liked was cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectic behavioral therapy, which is fascinating. You look at these books by Beck, all these fathers of cognitive behavioral therapy, and you open them up. And the rewiring patterns that they give for obsessive compulsive personality disorder, or selfishness of narcissistic personality, or all these, or even just normal people who are a little messed up, was I love myself just the way I am. It was just really remarkable. So you understand that what I learned in psychiatry, if I taught a patient to do this, I could bill Blue Cross and get paid. Or the patient could get the same treatment in You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. So in my PhD, and in my psychiatric residency, and I'm now a neuropsychiatrist and I work in the field of intuition, I learned the biochemistry of how someone rewires their thought patterns from I get one health problem after another to I love myself just the way I am completely lovable. We now know that we can rewire our patterns in our brain with cognitive behavioral therapy or affirmations. It changes the way our brains are wired, and they light up differently. So it's not just this fluff, woo-woo stuff with purple, but it really has biochemical, neurochemical, neuropharmacological effects just as effective, if not more effective, than Prozac, Zoloft, you know, whatever else you have. So as far as I'm concerned, Louise Hay, former model, former therapist, writes this little book, this little blue book, and lo and behold, she discovers something by observation that science supports decades later. And we now can see how it works, in a, well, at least from a biochemical point of view, on a functional MRI and PET scan. So I would be forever indebted to Louise Hay, what she did to me personally, because she woke me up, and literally what she has done as a revolutionary for, from my perspective, modern medicine. People have been getting hunches, intuition, seeing things, clairvoyance, hearing things, clairaudience, feeling things, clairsentience for years. And the thing is, if you look at everyone, you look at an audience, you look at people in a bus station, everyone's wired differently. But everybody's got a part of them, it's with a Boston accent, that's not right. A part of them that makes them unique, stands out from the crowd. And that part of you that's not right, that's different, that's a black sheep, that's the part of you, the window of opportunity for intuition. So for me, I've always been not right. My parents sent me to get evaluated when I was 5 because they said something was wrong with her. And though I passed and I got straight A's in all these classes, I clearly used to get bad conduct marks for, yeah, especially in the second grade. The teacher said, finish his class early, but clearly is distracted, is really interested in what's going on with everybody else in the room. When I was in the 8th grade, a teacher who probably had PMS looked at me sideways and I started to cry. And of course they took me to the guidance office because they're supposed to give you guidance, which is supposed to get you out of your right hemisphere of emotion and put you cleanly and neatly and hermetically sealed in your left brain intellect. And he said, you're never going to get through life with this sensitivity. And then when I went to see the medical intuitive, she said, when you learn to use your intuition, you'll stop falling asleep. The thing that I get, my intuition is like the thing that everybody gets their intuition, the part of them that's the flaw. It's this inattention that causes me to be concerned with what's going on in someone else's life. And then it's the part of me that falls asleep and goes into a dreamlike state. They used to study that. They used to teach medical students how to do that. In ancient Rome or Greece, I can't remember, they're all the same to me, they would put the medical students in the temple and teach them how to interpret their dreams and go into alternative states. And of course, the other health issues I've had that have helped me get a feeling in my body. So for me, I work as a medical intuitive, and I, with knowing only the name and age of someone and not seeing them, I can see specific things in their emotional life, specific, that I see aggravates their health. And then I look at their body intuitively. They're not in the room. They sign a consent form that we're not having a doctor-patient relationship. I'm not giving them a diagnosis, prescribing treatment, doing psychotherapy. That's my disclaimer. They sign that. And then I look at their body intuitively, clairvoyantly. I look at their eyes, ears, neck, thyroid, heart, breast, lungs, and every one of them. And I describe things that I see. I don't diagnose. So I'll say, I see redness where your esophagus and your stomach come together. And they'll say, yes, that's that reflux, and so on. And then I give them solutions on how to, you know, things that they can talk to their doctor about to make the symptoms better, but thought patterns that they can change to rewire the thought patterns that increase their chance toward illness. And where do we get those thought patterns from? Beck, a la Louise Hay. So that's how you do it. You learn to respond to the intuition in your body through symptoms, and then rewire the thought patterns that increase your chance toward getting that. So I wanted to understand if there was biochemical, scientific literature, left brain literature, to support intuition, medical intuition. Edgar Casey, people before him, Carolyn Mace. So I went to the Countway Library at Harvard, and I was doing research for Northrup's book, Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom. Being somewhat greedy, I got one of those big Xerox cards that you can get 500 copies. And there's a Xerox machine in the Countway that has a pedal, so you can do both hands. And I would look up organs in the first chakra, bones, joints, the immune system, and looked at emotional patterns. Just what Louise Hay does. You take her book and you footnote it. You look for, and the thing is, it's amazing. They have L1 and L2, which these levels of all these old literature. It's incredible. I found all this stuff, thyroid disease, irritable bowel syndrome, arrhythmias, alopecia, OBGYN, because Northrup's book needed it. And I just kept files in the back of my Honda Civic, which had no electrical work at that time. I had to drive only when it was light out. But anyway, I collected these files, and I just wanted to know, and I kept them. And then when an editor found about me when I was working on Northrup's book, Chris Northrop, I call her Northrop because that's what we do when you're on a team. You call people by their last names. She said, can you write a book? I said, sure. She said, how can you do it? How long can it take? I said, about 8 months. She said, you're kidding. I said, oh, no, it's ready to go. Because I had my 3-ring binders. And I had my little, when I read something, I put it on the card, and that's done. My favorite part, when the book came out, of course, my thyroid fell out. Graves' disease, my TSH went zip, 0. It's because I was afraid of talking about it because I'm a doctor, and I don't want to lose my license and have people, throw a fit. Anyway, so of course it was a really bad environment, and 2020 asked to come, film me. So I said, okay. So they came. This guy puts me in a chair, and he's got the thing there, and I won't even use his name because I don't want his aggravation. But anyway, so he starts rolling the camera, and my cats were in the room, and he says, "Do you talk to the dead?" And I went, "No, I don't talk to the dead. I can see them, but I don't talk to them. Why would I want to talk about them with them?" And he got a little mad. He said, he kept asking me the same questions, and he said, "Clearly, there is no scientific evidence to suggest that thought patterns are related to health, that there's anything to do with medical intuition." And I was sitting next to the cabinet with these 3-ring binders. I went, "I am so glad that you asked." And the cameraman, I said, "These binders," I said, "this first chakra, second," and they're clearly labeled because I am, a little bit of obsessive compulsive. We all have a little inner Martha Stewart. Anyway, I said, for example, Mr. Brown, not your real name. I took the 4th chapter. I said, if you were to have problems with unresolved hostility in relationships, the guy starts to get really nervous. I said, you would have an increased risk for cholesterol and heart attack, dying, sudden death from a heart attack. And the guy starts to look at it. I said, but there's more. They have a study here that says that when you learn how to fully express and release your hostility, you lower your risk of dying from a heart attack. Don't you think that's important information? Medical intuition can call it 4th emotional center or 4th chakra, or biological research can call it hostility, which is really you're mad as hell. Either way, I think it's unconscionable to prevent people from hearing this material. And he said, cut, and that was it, and they decided not to do it because it wasn't a flake kind of thing that would reveal it. You know what I'm saying?